Welcome, everybody, to Design and Dialogue number 79. This is Stephen Burks behind the mask, in direct conversation with Maria Cornejo from Zero, here in her Brooklyn studio. So we're doing something completely different for today's Design and Dialogue. I'm very excited to be here present with Maria. We're kind of old school like that. We've known each other for 20 years or more. And since we're old friends, we wanted to come together and have a more in-person conversation, let's say, more direct conversation. So how are you, Maria?
I'm good, hanging in there. It's not been an easy year.
Yeah.
And I had it, so that's why I'm not wearing a mask. It's just been a tough year. All around. People have been working inside. They're not getting dressed. All our clients who got dressed up to go to art openings and museum shows, and they're not doing that.
Yeah.
So what we've been selling in the collection has been very much the more casual part, which is funny because it takes it back how it started in the beginning. Sort of gone back to the future, gone back to its roots.
Yeah, speaking of going back to the future, you've described your clothing as your baby, and you've said that every dress tells a story. So I know you were mentioning the archive sale when you were talking about that. So maybe that's an interesting place to start.
I think when you're a designer, you have I have my clothing. To me, I have memories for every single piece. And I was pulling things for the archive sale. I pulled 400 pieces because we're trying to clear a room in the archive because there's just not enough room after 23 years. I realized that it was very emotional because I remembered like the fittings. I remember where I was with my family at the time, with my kids who were younger. I remember, Mark, in the beginning, what we were doing together. It's a very emotional journey for me. It's not just clothes.
Yeah, of course.
And I think clothing holds a lot of memories. And even when I'm not wearing them, the fact that somebody who is doing something amazing is wearing them also gives them their character and their memory and their spirit, in a way, soul. So to me, they're not inanimate objects.
Right, of course. And just to give a bit of background on Maria, your journey, you're a woman of the world. You were born
in
Chile.
I left Chile at 11 as a political refugee. I could go on forever, but it's just a short, condensed version. We got accepted to go to England after missing our flight to Cuba, which was my father's first choice. So I never thought I was going to be a designer. I thought I was going to do ballet and farming. That's what I was brainwashed into,
Wow.
My dad had me reading Mao's Little Red Book when I was 7.
Wow.
And we ended up in England. And
this is the 70s, early 70s.
70s, January 75, after a year in Peru.
Incredible.
Yeah.
So what an exciting time to be in England.
It was amazing. It was at the end of glam rock, the beginning of punk.
Yeah.
For me, all my formative years are England. But I couldn't speak a word of English, so I was like literally like a fish out of water. It's like felt like nobody could hear what I was saying, and I had to learn to speak English, and it's just a lot.
Maybe all your other senses were heightened, and you were absorbing all of the magic that was 70s London. The punk scene alone, right?
But also I ended up being in London only for 6 months in Shepherd's Bush, and then we got sent to Manchester, which is all the music scene is.
Wow.
So, it was full on hacienda punk,
That's
everything.
incredible.
Yeah. So that was what I grew up with.
Wow. That's really exciting. So after being educated in the UK as well,
yes.
You then lived in Paris and you worked in Tokyo, is that right?
Yes. When I was in London, I was part of a collection called Richmond Cornejo with John Richmond. So we did it together, and we had a licensee in Japan. So I was traveling to Japan a lot and Italy. And then I ended up moving to Paris and, getting married to Mark. So Mark Borthwick. So then, basically I was still traveling everywhere, Hong Kong, Tokyo, Milan, everywhere.
Yeah.
And sort of, I think out of all those places, I've taken a lot of influences.
Yeah.
Because I don't refer anything. I don't do vintage shopping or anything like that. I'm constantly looking for inspiration within my own database, as it were.
Mm.
And I think those places have really influenced me.
Yeah, and it's also very, I guess, telling how those different places feed into the collection and how you end up in a place like New York where all the cultures are coming together anyway. So,
Yeah.
give us a sense of when you arrived in New York and
I moved
what you
here.
were thinking.
I moved here in 1996, and we had a 6-year-old daughter. My husband Mark was doing a lot of fashion work for Italian Vogue, and he wanted to be here. To be honest, I didn't want to move to New York.
Mark Borthwick was or is a fashion photographer, but really one of the most influential in that kind of early or mid '90s purple fashion scene.
And so we moved to New York, and I decided that I didn't want to be in the fashion business. I saved money from working for other people, and I got a creative space that I was going to share with Mark and do like a gallery slash creative space, and not make clothes.
I love it.
And we could show friends. And so in the beginning, I started off by thinking, okay, what can I do to make things? And I naturally drifted towards fashion again, but I wanted to do something that to me felt very New York, which was basically like streetwear, denim, nylon, jersey, sweatshirts, all that stuff that to me is what New York signified and what I wanted to wear, but in a cool way. So how I first started was basically basing my designs in a new way of cutting, which was just basing it on 4 simple geometric shapes and figuring out what they would do on the body.
Right.
So everything evolved from there. And I started also by like searching for fabrics in jobbers, and upcycling fabrics. And I mean, I wanted to make cushions and bed covers originally. So I'm not going to make anything that requires a size or a body or a season. So, but I sort of weirdly ended up doing that. And, and people were sort of attracted to it. I mean, I had Colette who came and wanted to buy it, and then Barney's and I didn't want to wholesale. I really didn't. I wanted to keep it made in New York. I wanted to know where things were made. I wanted to be really like the idea of an atelier, that everything got made there, small batches, and it would, we would make samples, put them at the front of the store, and if people responded, we would make more.
Yeah. Well, this is I think a really different way of looking at fashion, especially during that time. I mean, if we look at the late '90s, this was because we were coming out of this very avant-garde minimalist moment, and all of a sudden people were discovering the importance of streetwear and a more casual approach to fashion, and then there's this kind of mix of what would later become fast fashion, So for you to have that eye on what was happening, I guess locally, and then all of the influences of what was happening globally, turn that into your vision. I guess I'm curious how you evolved a particular point of view in fashion.
How'd you evolve? By sticking to your guns. I mean, I never looked at somebody else's piece of clothing. I literally really I wanted to find the passion in it again. So I wanted to sort of basically find new ways of cutting. So all the patterns that you see, they're like strange shapes.
Yeah.
Like that's the manta top on the floor. It looks like a manta.
So we're looking at there's really a pile of patterns laying in the floor here, where Maria, when we walked in, Maria was going through all of these patterns, and sort of in an old industrial building, it's the sound of the heat warming up in the background.
Yes, sorry.
But the patterns are beautiful because they're something between abstract shapes and anthropomorphic forms, and it makes me ask the question of, actually, can we grab that? Can we just have a look at that?
I can show you. Can you see that?
So this is more your size than my size, I guess. But how does this work?
This goes like this. These are the armholes. That's the neckline. And then this wraps around to the waistband.
Wow.
And it drapes on the body.
Wow.
So I mean, for me, that's what I'm a bit of a design geek,
Yeah.
nerd. So that's what to me was interesting, to find a new way of cutting things. Because I felt like everything had been done.
We're gonna see some images, of course, of Maria's work as well. But being here in the studio, we have the ability to look at a bit more her process and understand firsthand what's happening.
So
and
this was a skirt.
Wow.
So one side wraps around the body, and like that, and it wraps around. And funnily enough, we just did a new version of it.
Oh, that's fantastic.
But it's a more commercial version with more scenes in it, so the yields are better and stuff, you know?
It really looks as current today as I guess it did back then. Almost, I don't know, it makes me ask the question of, how the kind of avant-garde existed, or what did that represent for you, and why you named your company Zero.
I named the company Zero because I wanted it was started afresh, and I didn't want people to have any preconceived ideas of it. I didn't want people to think of my career before. I just wanted people to look at the piece of clothing like objects, and on an instant appeal whether they like them or not. So there was no history to them, attached to them. And that's why I don't like vintage, because I felt like it's sort of somebody else's character in those clothes, somebody else's time. And to me, what's modern is that you represent your time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Politically and environmentally, and to me, vintage is beautiful to look at, but I don't want to wear clothes that somebody else wore. But I think it's also to do with being a refugee and the fact that I had to look through piles of clothes in the Salvation Army, and they smelled of mold and stuff. But no, I think it's just trying to figure out a new way of cutting and sort of its objects.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, maybe this is a good place to kind of dive into some images of Maria's work and understand the kind of arc of your development. So, are we ready, Lucy? Okay. So this is a kind of timeline that we're looking at.
And you saw the store right before. And I used to get artists to collaborate doing displays, or, like I used to say, take over the store and do a display. And it was really cool because it was just always, I think the picture that you had there that was an idea was Jordan Tinker, and he had made these ceramic animals, but inside were actually like stuffed toys. And they were very modern looking. I mean, I don't know if you can go back to that picture, but they were beautiful. And then different over the time work with different people to bring them into to lend them the space. I mean, we did something once with Susan Chancholo. I wanted to support other designers and other artists, and to me that was interesting, having more of a community spirit.
In New York at that time, there really was this kind of burgeoning creative community.
And Stephen, we hosted you once in your furniture. I remember.
Get into that. Yeah, that's right.
That was for Design Week, wasn't it?
The shop was on
Mott
Street and Nolita, and before it was called Nolita, right?
Yeah.
And Maria and I had met before, and I'd frequented into Zero just to kind of breathe the air of her work, and I actually presented one of my first ideas about furniture.
Yeah, there was a shirt,
which was like all of these found chairs, because I couldn't really afford to make anything, or all of these found chairs, but I wanted to give a sense of repackaging, or
which is, I mean, we should do it again.
There was a little bit of a ready-made, I guess you could say. We covered all these chairs in tape. It was a lot of fun. But let's go into, here's the store, right, on Mott Street. So what year did you open the store?
The store opened in June '98.
And then this is the kind of...
This is the beginning, the very early shapes. You can see the circle top, the triangle top. That's the patterns that's the circle on the body, that's the triangle. In the pink, and then like everything to me was about circles, and I would start drawing and see where it went. That dress I have hanging here, it's a one-piece dress, the white one that just wraps around the body, and it has the fluorescent tape on it.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So that is like literally this piece, which is like flat. I mean, I can show you if you want.
Yeah, so I'm curious how the combination of cutting and developing new shapes also dovetailed with this idea of an early idea of sustainability in fashion.
Well, for me, because I was working with found fabrics, I was basically buying like fleece, like leftover fabric, denim. I was just buying leftover fabric from designers or whatever I could find. And so we would only make, and we were very much just making almost on demand at the time. Because we would put a rack of clothes at the front, and if we had a response, then we would make more.
Okay.
Which was a fun way to work, and I had 3 sample makers in the back.
I remember that. And, sewing machines.
Yeah.
And there was so the store operated as a kind of retail and also showroom, right? Because you're presenting the patterns and getting feedback on them.
Yeah, and I love the idea of being direct to consumer and getting instant feedback from clients and people walking in the store, rather than through the filter of the press or the filter of a buyer, because it's much more instantaneous and it's much more true. And people, that was the thing about New York, people were very open to newness. They were very open compared to Paris or London.
Yeah.
And not to have to sell a collection and not to have a merchandising plan, which I hate. Fucking hate merchandising plans. I do everything very instinctively.
Yeah.
So to me, the minute you start throwing merchandising plan, I'm like, because I think that's what people react to. They react to things instinctively now. Nobody needs any more clothes, so it's almost like a gut reaction. And
that's the beauty of your work, I think, is that the customers see you as an artist and understand that they're buying not just a piece of fashion, but as you mentioned before, an object, right? So it's difficult to imagine, that just a shirt, something that looks like a traditional shirt, becomes something that you'll want to keep over time, unless it's somehow, personal, right? But the idea of having these objects, which are also like clothing, it makes it's hard to imagine anyone wanting to throw those away.
You know what's really lovely? We have Cindy Sherman as a client, and I knew she bought quite a lot of the collection, and she's part of our 15-year whatever celebrations. But in Vogue, I read, and she said she had 200 pieces that she collected.
Wow!
And to me, that was just like, my mind was blown. I was like, really?
So 200 pieces, how much of a collection is that? If we look at, you started in 98.
Oh my God.
And every season you were doing.
Well, the collection started off by being tiny. There were like maybe maximum 15 styles in the beginning. Now they're like 110. But depending on the season, they go around 110. But that includes a lot of different things.
110 pieces.
Yes.
Wow. Every year or twice a year.
It used to be 4 times a year.
4 times a year.
Yeah. Which for me, now we've reduced it twice a year. So that's just 200. But within that, to be honest, there's only maybe like 20% that's totally new, because there's also like a core collection now, or there are things that keep being repeated that they're like the workhorses in the collection. I mean, I have an archive here that is every single coat. There's like 200,000 coats, pants, everything. And with my assistant, sometimes we come in here and we look through things and we go, okay, this could be good now to bring back. Or so there's a constant walking backwards and forwards, like a dance,
right.
and then adding newness into it.
So the archive becomes fuel for new collections.
Yes.
And a point. So zero in essence. You're using your own work as the starting point,
Yes.
the point of reference. This almost looks like Chloe 7U. Is that?
Yes, that's Chloe, and she's wearing this blanket coat that I made in one piece. It's literally one piece of fabric that wraps around the body, and it was made out of actually a warmer blanket, one of those really velvety, like spongy blankets. You know, it was made out of that.
So some of the work and the patterns that you're developing actually remind me, or I guess the only point of reference I have is going all the way back to constructivism, going all the way back to the Bauhaus, or going all the way back to some of those performance pieces for Dada, you know? And so I'm wondering if was any of that at all point of view?
No, funnily enough, no, because like I said, for me, I wanted to get away from designing
from any type of reference.
Yeah, because I'd already, I'd worked for big companies, I worked for myself, and for me, I didn't want to do it otherwise. For me, it was about creating a new language, and I always said, even if it ends up looking like something that somebody can refer to, I don't want it stuck from that.
Yeah.
I wanted it to start from a really pure point of view that wasn't influenced by fashion or anything. It was just influenced by cutting and, things that I wanted to wear or my friends wanted to wear.
Well, it's so interesting because that, here we are a century later, and there's that reference of, an artistic way of working with the body, beginning from almost a point of performance. And then there's also the fact that many of your customers are creative women. And so tell me about the relationship between you and your customers. How collaborative does that become? And we can continue looking at the images.
Well, over the years, I mean, I used to be in the store a lot more. I'm not anymore, but, they used to come in and we used to chat. And, I remember making a dress for a friend and, it sort of inspired by solving a problem for her, something she needed something to wear in Paris to the American embassy. And I made her this velvet dress, which then went into the collection. Then Michelle Ellie, we made her wedding dress. You know who Michelle Ellie is?
No.
She's married to Mike Meyer, and she lives in Germany, and she's the most stylish lady.
Oh, wow.
She's American, but I made her wedding dress. And she has a whole Comme des Garçons exhibition right now in Germany, because she's the biggest collector. So I made her wedding dress, and it was all based out of one piece of silk taffeta that wrapped around the body with a shrug. And those things, when you're working with somebody closely, then they become part of the language. Because she said to me, well, I love the dress, she said, but I need something for my shoulders. So I thought, okay, let's make her something. And then that became something else.
Well, it's wonderful to get that direct consumer feedback, which is something that, I can say as a product designer, furniture designer, we rarely get a look at how people are using our things.
Really?
But from the perspective of fashion, you have this open dialogue, and you're not only the designer, but then you're also the maker, and you're also sourcing the material, and so you have a 360-degree approach and control over your product, which is, gives you the opportunity to play and have that exchange.
I think so, very much so in the beginning, not so much now, because I'm not in the store anymore, and there was, even looking through the patterns, I was finding patterns which basically we used to do to order, and it was really sweet to see the name of the client. This was made to order, and from the samples they would pick something and say, well, I want this made, and then they would say, okay, I want this triangle top, I want it longer. And to have that conversation, that doesn't really happen anymore, because now we're working more standardized, and we're wholesaling. But it was great days to work like that. It was such a fun time.
Yeah. So I guess that obviously we're all rethinking all of the ways that we're working today, and we're as creative people in New York, we're all wondering what's next. And I'm wondering what inspires you today. Where are you looking for,
I think,
without having this direct connection to your client?
I think still trying to have that in a different way. you know, with the archive sale, I got to see a lot of clients and even like samples. I put some samples in that had never made it into the collection. And all of a sudden somebody in the store said, "Oh, what's this?" And I went, "Oh, well, that was, you know, it's one of the kids that didn't make it into the collection." And they said, "Oh God, you should make this again." And it was sweet to have that sort of feedback and conversation.
So in many ways, your efforts to kind of trim down your inventory actually grew your inventory at times because you're actually bringing things back.
No, because you edit other things out, you know. And I think, you know, the collection now is very much a conversation, you know, with my design director. And, you know, like we start off from a point of fabrics and everything, but then we have a conversation on like what would be great in this fabric. And, it, you know, and sometimes I make a chicken scratch sketch and otherwise something just gets draped. And it's more of an evolution now and a conversation. And even looking at the archive, it's like I always say, okay, I'm sick of looking at it because I've seen it all before. So I always say, so what looks fresh to you? Because to me, I know I like it, but I'm 58 years old. So do you still think it's relevant? You know?
Yeah. So
it's
I mean,
conversation.
I suppose you're at the stage where, I mean, I guess we all are in some way. We're questioning, you know, how we go forward, how we continue, and how we understand our own work today, because everything is so different. I'm wondering, are you working on are you documenting the archive and with the archive sale, the pieces? Are you looking to publish a book, or
well, the book we published 3 years ago, and so that would be another book. I think my next book will be If Clothes Could Talk, because I always say that the clothes have the most interesting lives, you know. But the book, you know, this was like the first 20 years.
Lucy, maybe we'll go back to our conversation. Yeah.
You know, so the book was like the first 20 years and the very beginning. This was the first thing I drew.
This is amazing. I mean, so this is the book.
And the cover is a picture that Mark took, Mark Borthwick.
1997 to 2017.
Yeah.
And on this page, you can see one of Maria's very first drawings here.
It was just the concepts drawings, which basically everything would be based around these shapes, you know, very simple shapes.
So beginning with those simple shapes, can you tell us a little bit about how you develop a whole collection?
Well, you know, when you go here, we do a circle top. So then I was thinking with this really cool circle top made in t-shirts and jersey, I would want to wear a pair of cool denim pants. So then I thought, okay, so the denim pants I want to cut in one piece. And so, where are they? The pants to be cut in one piece. So that was the sketch for the pants and how they wrapped around.
And the cutting in one piece is really your signature for how, and I think it's this sketch here, it's really your signature for how you're working and thinking.
How I started working. I mean, I think things have a lot more seams now because it, you know, at the time we weren't cutting a lot of pieces, so it wasn't wasteful. But then as time, you know, started producing for other people, then we realized that we needed to cut down on waste. So how do you insert the pieces within, you know, so this is like a tube with another tube at the top, which becomes the top.
Maybe this is a good opportunity for us to start to look at some of the work here in the studio. You guys stay with us. We're going to walk around a little bit. Everybody see that?
A little denim jacket that wraps around.
Right.
And
are you hearing us okay, Lucy? Okay.
And it has no shoulder seams. I'm very against shoulder seams, which now are included in the clothing. But in the beginning, I was very against any preconceived ideas like shoulder seams, side seams. I wanted everything to be like one piece.
Oh.
So this is wearing this in the show. Sorry. So this. And then
Wow.
it
That's
comes the dress,
amazing.
you know?
It's really surprising how it transforms, you know,
Yeah.
you may not understand it hanging on the rack.
Yeah.
So did that force you to communicate the clothes in any particular way? I mean, I know that Mark's pictures were very powerful in
Yeah.
terms of their poetic feeling.
Well, I think I was really lucky that Mark really, you know, he really appreciates what I do, you know, and so he makes it take this is also, you know, dress which is like an oval shape, and then this is the top, the back goes to the front, and the sketch is in there. Actually.
So the oval, the actual
oval
shape
straight
gives it the drape in the back.
Yeah. And then the back comes to the front, and then by placing the neckline, you get the draping.
I have to say, Maria, it doesn't look like that would be flattering when you see it on the hanger.
It is though.
But
I think it depends what you think.
no. But of course, all of the clothes, the way that they hang, is so surprising because they're so beautiful on the body.
You know, but a lot of people say the clothes very flattering because I also don't like things to be too close to the body, sized or anything, and they're forgiving. And because also I had children, so I wanted clothes that I felt good in, that I didn't feel like I had to lose weight to wear. And a lot of women appreciated that, and that's why over the years we've dressed women of all shapes and sizes. You know, and you know, this is two circles, you know. But you see, I was like the techie fabric, like the foam mixed with the wool. I like the contrast, the yin and the yang, the male, the female, almost like the gender fluid situation that a guy could wear it, a girl could wear it.
Now, were you actually designing clothes at the same time for men?
No, the men again came later because guys were coming in and asking for things in their sizes. It wasn't like thinking, oh my God, I'm going to do a men's collection. It happened very organically. Guys were literally coming in and squeezing themselves into things, and all of a sudden saying, do you have this in like a longer length? So then we ended up doing things that, you know, in one of the displays here, you see like the bike pan in a women's size and a men's length, you know, but it was the same style. It was just the lengths were different. And
I just want to show and look at the complexity of the pattern making here, just in terms of the structure of the garment. So it really, the idea that the garment is a product and is an object. I mean, you can see the way it takes a three-dimensional shape based on the way that the pattern is constructed. And so, Maria, you've talked to me about the fact that your studio became a kind of school for teaching.
Yeah, I mean, I think in a way, because I was working with a lot of young kids, like interns, and, you know, and we were learning from each other in a way, you know, and it was very creative. It was a very experimental time because I would draw something and they would drape it and it would come back to me. And, you know, it was a conversation. And I think I almost felt like it was a little bit like school. Like a lot of the kids, I even had a lunch with somebody yesterday and somebody said to me, oh God, you taught me so much, you know? And I think it wasn't meant to be a school, but it just happened organically because I was there. Yeah. And I'm very hands-on. I mean, I'm one of those designers who goes to the studio all the time, every day. I'm not like an absent.
Right.
You know.
So tell us, what is your team like today?
We have a small team. You know, we've had to have cats and stuff, so we have a couple of people in design, like my design director, Lauren and Jenny. And also we have the collection. We're not doing menswear anymore, and we're not doing swimwear. You know, a few years ago, we decided to shrink it back down because I felt like it was so getting too much. And rather than be jack of all trades and master of none, I wanted to refocus it on the things that were really important. Because I feel like there was too much of that like thing of people wanting to brand everything. And I thought, well, yeah, I could do everything. But the reality is that there's no point. There's so much stuff out there.
Mm.
And even with the menswear, even though I did it for a while and we tried to get it going and everything, I thought, well, what's the point? The minute they asked me to make it more and more commercial, I wasn't interested, because to me, if I can't have a point of view within something, there's
Yeah.
no point me doing it, because somebody else will do it better.
So what does it mean when you say make it more commercial? I mean, I think we all have a sense of what that means, but we also have to look at how, in this moment, right, retail is completely flat,
Yeah.
or if not, dying. And to make something more commercial at that time, to fit into a distribution system, which included these luxury stores, et cetera. Can you just talk a little bit about that?
Well, it was more commercial because the collection, the men's, was going to go into, be sold with a menswear agent and stuff. But as a designer and as a woman, I didn't believe that I should be just designing like regular men's clothes and just sticking my name in them. I wanted them to have a point of view like the women's, and it was more about, weirdly enough to me, I'm always like, love the idea of unisex or gender fluid, things that both could wear. And the minute I'm asked to do anything too classic, I'm not interested.
Right.
Somebody else can do it better.
Right.
So to me, it's not.
And typically, men aren't as experimental with their fashion as
No,
women.
but we had a good following, and actually a lot of gay guys as well. And now men's fashion is sort of having a great time. The last show, we had a couple of guys in the show, and I just put them in the women's, and they were so gorgeous. And I think the old idea of like male, female, it's just gone out the window, really.
Yeah,
you
sure.
know?
And I mean, I guess there were also other reasons in terms of your sustainability vision to reduce the collection as well, because how do you maintain control over all of those pieces and supply chains, etc.?
Yeah, and to minimize, I always say like, let's get creative with less, But then as the collection grew, it became something else, and I just wasn't happy with it. I just thought we don't need all this stuff. It's just noise for noise sake. There's a point that you have to sort of hunker down and figure out what's really important to you and what makes sense. And we don't all need to be everything to everybody.
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. I guess I'm wondering, what is the solution though for a project at this scale that seeks to be sustainable in a world where everyone wants sustainability but doesn't necessarily want to pay for it, right? Because obviously there's this question of luxury prices and value and things made by hand locally, etc. So
well, I think part of sustainability is also knowing who made your clothes, and it's when things are cheap, there's a reason that they're cheap.
Right.
Somebody's not getting paid properly, or whatever, the materials are not very good. And I think we should get back to actually treasuring things and buying less, but buying beautiful things. I think there's just too much waste out there. And I mean, my son he's went vintaging yesterday, and he had a great time. I don't know, and even the kids now, there's a lot of brands that are upcycling, and I think we have to make better use of the resources that we have already and repurpose things. You should go back to doing your furniture in the beginning, reconfiguring,
Yeah.
I just think, there's a lot of waste out there, and I think it's become so much that anybody can get a t-shirt and put their brand on it, like a basic t-shirt, and they have a collection. I'm sorry, that is not a collection. It's like, it's not creative. I mean, we do sweatshirting, but it's beautifully cut. It's made in Japan. It's beautiful materials. The way it's cut is interesting. It's interesting shapes. It's like, I don't see the point of designing something that exists already. It doesn't add to the world.
So this brings up for me that what I begin to see in fashion, like obviously with the advent of fast fashion, so many people today seem to dress the same. And I feel like there was a kind of shift at the turn of the century, right, where you begin to see people looking for almost a uniform. And it obviously makes sense in this time, this day and age with the crisis that we're going through and how little visibility people need. But I mean, how do you respond to that as someone who is
Well, you know what I think? To me, the fact that Instagram exists, the fact that you can look at everything
Mm,
on a screen, people are sort of opting out because if you want to see a gallery or an art show, you can look at it on your screen.
mm,
Fashion, you can just look at it on your screen, and then you're overwhelmed with choices and decisions. So how do you make a decision? So people, weirdly enough, are sort of opting out.
So do you think they're consuming it on their screen, just consuming
Yes.
images of it,
Yes.
but aren't looking to own it and
No.
allow that to affect their persona? I was having a conversation recently with a much younger person talking about how, in many ways, people in our generation used to express themselves through fashion,
Through
fashion, and today it seems they express themselves through images, and and it's a lot less about um, who you are and what you believe in, and especially the values that you carry in your work, and more about just getting an image out there and having that image quickly consumed.
Yeah, and liked, which is sort of,
Liked and unliked, and so
which, funnily enough, both my kids don't post anything.
hmm, hmm,
I mean, I do because of work and stuff, or I use Instagram. I have a private account, and I use it almost like a postcard because it's a way of keeping in touch with my friends or family. I don't really do Facebook, but I do Instagram for that. And then for the company, it is more of a promotional tool.
Yeah, I suppose I'm wondering, where does fashion go though, and especially a very creative enterprise, in a situation like this, if you're not feeding those images.
Well, I think also like I greatly believe in repetition. I think people almost need to be brainwashed that something is great. If something shouldn't go out of fashion just because the season is over. If something is beautifully designed, like some of these pieces, I mean, to me they're timeless. And depending how you put them together, I feel youthful. I feel like, I might not look young, but I feel ageless. And I feel like I'm young in my brain. Maybe physically I don't look it, but I think, and clothing, when it's well designed, is timeless.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it transcends trends and the bulimia of fashion, basically. To me, it's bulimia. People just consume to throw it up again.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so it's a little bit about staying true to yourself, right? And I wonder if it's also about access, because I suppose there are cases where I think about myself as a consumer, and not that I want to be always shopping online, because I think it's incredibly wasteful for one person to order one T-shirt to be flown halfway around the world to come directly to your door.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that I'm doing that, but but it's crazy. It's really crazy. But on the other hand, the work that I appreciate and the artists in fashion that I appreciate may not be accessible.
Yeah.
And so I wonder, what do you do in that certain situation? And have you had the opportunity to do one of these sort of capsule collections with a bigger distribution chain?
No, that hasn't happened. We do everything in-house, and we distribute everything. I mean, I've done a capsule collection for Hyundai, but that was just purely for promoting sustainability. I think the reality is that everybody right now I just think everyone are overwhelmed. I mean, I have magazine subscriptions that I don't have time to read. The New Yorker or whatever, New York Times, even I get the New York Times at the weekend, and I don't even get the chance to go into that. To me, it's just become something that we're so overwhelmed with emails and messaging and
with our digital lives.
Yeah, and the fact that, for some reason, it just keeps sort of breathing on itself. The phone, it just keeps adding to itself. It just keeps blowing up. It's having sex with itself, like a seahorse.
It's multiplying.
It's multiplying, so you like something, so then it keeps feeding you that extra stuff. And it's just relentless. And I think people just feel like exhausted with it. I mean, I feel exhausted with it. I don't even want to look at it.
Mm,
I mean, the weekends, what I do is that if anything, I just go in my backyard and play with my plants.
mhm,
That's my favorite thing to do
mm,
since the pandemic,
mm,
is to just, because I was on all these panel things with BOF, with the, CFD. I'm on the board of CFDA, on board
right,
of Women NYC,
right.
and the screen time. And then when I had 5 minutes to myself, I would just go in the backyard and trim my plants, water my plants, and just be back to nature and things that were tactile, not a screen.
Yeah, yeah. I really miss being in the field and being able to work with my hands
Yeah. I
with
mean, even
artisans.
yesterday, I got some wool and I'm going to start knitting again because I want to do something that doesn't require me talking about it or thinking about it. I just want to, it's almost like a
Mhm,
meditation when you do
mhm,
things by hand,
mhm. Absolutely.
you know?
So, speaking of by hand, tell us about this beautiful
Oh,
sweater here that
this
you're
gorgeous sweater. Can I
wearing.
stand? This is like, okay.
This
So,
is it's a new product, right?
yeah, this is the fall winter collection which just came in the store. And the collection for fall winter was really inspired by, the fact that I lived in London, Paris, South
Mm.
America. And to me, these
It's a bit of a patchwork.
it is. And I just, wanted it to look like you just found all these pieces of sweaters and put them together.
Mm.
But at the same time, it's like a very simple, it's a square, so anybody can wear it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's handmade in Bolivia by a couple of women's knitters,
Mm.
and we get them to sign every piece. So every
Oh,
piece has their
beautiful.
signature. So if you look at my label in the back,
Yeah.
I can't remember who this was made
It's
by.
made by Celia
Celia
Celia Arequipa.
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 So anyway, these are really beautiful indigenous women,
Mm.
and so they support their kids by knitting.
Mm.
So to me, the luxury is that I know who knit my sweater,
Absolutely.
and she's feeding her kids from knitting this sweater.
Absolutely.
And
Tell us about all of these kinds of initiatives that you're involved in. I mean, you mentioned the CFPA, you mentioned the Women's NYC
I mean, I'm
project.
just there to give a perspective or opinion. I mean, there's a lot of us, BOF as well as a panel. I think somebody said I'm a bit of a veteran, so they respect my opinion as an independent thinker.
Mhm,
Um, I just did a project with Hyundai, for all
mhm,
their ads, and I went to Kiev in August to promote their sustainability efforts.
mhm,
Um, no, it's interesting. It's also for somebody who doesn't really go out there to be asked to be on these things and give a perspective from somebody who's actually quite insular.
yeah.
It's interesting.
Now, have you been called a design activist because of these things? I mean, would you
Oh,
would you consider yourself?
I've been called the punk of sustainability.
Nice. I
So I
like
was
that.
like, oh,
Sustainable punk.
yeah.
That's funny.
And so somebody else said veterans, and I went, veteran sounds old, but punk I like,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know?
yeah. Are you teaching?
No,
Okay.
no, because I feel like I did sort of like judging competitions and things over the years, but also, working with interns or whatever. I feel like I do that anyway.
Mm,
And recently I haven't been asked actually.
mm. And have you seen, I guess, in all of these projects, have you seen a kind of new generation coming? I mean, not that you have to name any names, but I'm just curious what the young people are thinking about in fashion besides what we see on the street, because it's not.
I mean, I'm not teaching, so I'm not the voice of knowledge here, but I even see from my son the fact that he's looking at vintage, that he's getting interested in clothes from like 30 years ago,
Mm.
and there's a whole trend of people going back in time.
And that goes very much against, or it's sort of the opposite direction that you were trying to go in.
Yeah, but then for them, I think it's just, and also a lot of sustainable brands now. Colleen Estrada, they just did a thing for Gucci where basically they don't believe there will be clothing, that they're just dressing avatars for a video game.
Mm.
There's this whole thing now
Mm.
that people are not going to be wearing much fashion, and they'll just be dressing themselves as avatar with fantastic clothes online.
I mean, do you think
It's sort of weird to me, but
yeah.
that is the new thing. I don't know.
Yeah, and I see that. I mean, obviously, those are really at opposite ends of
Yeah.
the spectrum. The work that you're doing, for example, in Bolivia, working with the community, and then this idea that, you know, there's this kind of digital life of fashion. We had Carla Fernandez on the show some months ago with Pedro Reyes down in Mexico, and she spoke about how her work is really about keeping that Mexican culture, the indigenous Mexican culture alive, and working with these communities is one way that she does that.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of designers are trying to do that, to work, whether it's in Peru or in India. I mean, I know Aurora James works in Africa. I think there's beauty in things that are handmade.
Absolutely.
And, you know, everything becomes so digital and cold to me. That feels so heartless. I like things that are a little less about perfection and a little bit more fucked up, you know, and sort of, and have a little bit of life in them. You know, when you can tell when clothes have been designed on a computer because they're just flat. And then the only thing that they do is like do colors and, you know, like whatever for Instagram. And they're very flat. It's the same pattern, it's the same cutting. It's just adding a seam here, color here. I don't know. It's just a new way of doing it as well, but it's just not my way. I mean, now we do colorways on the computer, and that's great. It sort of helps to do, you know, like colorways for prints or, you know, color blocking or whatever. But there's something to be said about things being 3D and draped in 3D.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That are not flat, even for furniture, for anything. You can feel when somebody's touched something.
Yeah, and you can definitely feel it when you sit down.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like, you know, there's some chairs that you think, okay, that was a good idea, but
no, absolutely not.
Yeah.
So I wonder about the sense of consciousness that we're all arriving to with such a digital life today. If there is, I guess, something about products having an origin, having a cause, having an authenticity, having coming from a particular place. Do you think that products need to have a cause to be successful today?
I think, you know, I love the story. I mean, I love being able to talk about these stories.
And bring attention to
that. You know, like this weekend I was shopping on Bed-Stuy, and I went into a couple of local stores, and I met the lady who makes the oils and makes, you know, the candles and stuff. And there's so much stuff out there. So what makes it special now?
Yeah.
You know, and especially like standard products, everybody, it's like the products just get relabeled differently, whether it's clothing or home stuff, but it's the same stuff. So what makes it special? And I'm not saying it's for everybody, it's just me.
Yeah.
I feel like that. I feel like I need things that I know who made it, or I know where it came from, or I'm supporting somebody in my community to make a difference, you know? I just think it's much, right now, the world is very big, so how can we support each other?
Absolutely.
You know, I'd rather buy something, you know, from you or from a friend, and it's like buying art. If you know the artist or you know the maker, then it becomes that much more special.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely. Wow. Well, I'm wondering if at this point we open it up to questions. The conversation has meandered all over, and that's no, please. It's been wonderful. But that's the nature of us getting together and chatting, I suppose. Let me have a look here. If we have any questions, it looks like we have. Let me scroll up. Okay. We have a question here. I'll just read this one. As a Chilean refugee, from Malika Leeper, as a Chilean refugee, do you feel a strong connection to Chile today? And how do you connect with your heritage from a distance?
As a Chilean refugee, it's weird because when I'm in Chile, I don't feel very Chilean. I feel very British.
Right.
Here I keep in touch with my family through WhatsApp, and my aunts who are 80-year-old, you know, they've got onto technology, which is great. But Chile's gone way ahead. So what my memories of Chile, and Chile is a very modern country now. It's very advanced, you know. And so even for England, which I grew up in England, I have a nostalgia for the England that I knew. England doesn't exist like that.
Mm.
So I think one of the sadness and the beauties of being an immigrant is that you forever feeling a little bit like you're missing somebody or something,
Mm.
because you never. It's like when I go back to Chile, like I don't feel like I fit in, even though I love to be with my family, because I didn't grow up there.
Yeah.
When I'm in England, now my friends have left or whatever. So I think that is part of the refugee or immigrant sort of sadness, that we all sort of, as much as in other ways, it's enriched my life infinitely. And I'm very happy to speak 4 languages and have friends everywhere. There is a sadness there because this is a nostalgia for something that you're not part of.
Mm. Mm. Yeah.
Because I'm not American, even though I have an American passport. I'm not British. I don't have a British passport. I'm not French. And Chilean, I have my Chilean passport. But in reality, I left Chile when I was 11 years old. So I don't really know the sense of humor anymore.
Mm.
Every year there's new slang, there's new movements. Chile is way ahead, like even when there was a whole Me Too situation, all those Chilean women who are like, so they started this whole, protest. I was blown away,
Mm.
And Danny Vega doing that movie, Fantastic Woman. I mean, there's so many things that I'm proud of by sort of, I always say cool by association, but in reality, I haven't lived there. So there is this sadness because I wish I had been there, but my life changed on September the 11th, 1973, when the Americans came and they shot my president.
Wow.
So, but then I can't live in regret because so many amazing things have happened to me. Sad things. I've had an incredible life, but also quite hard.
Yeah.
I've been on survival mode since I was 11. So where do I fit in now?
But I mean, the beauty of that, though, Maria, and I think what's so inspiring about your story is it's not about fitting in.
Mm-hmm.
It's about creating.
Yeah.
It's about using the imagination, and I think this is really the window of opportunity that we all have at this moment.
Yeah.
That we have to look outside of ourselves and say, what kind of world do we want to live in? What kind of clothes do we want to wear? What kind of products do we want to buy? What kind of people do we want to support?
Yeah.
And I think that's what's wonderful about what you've managed to bring to the world in fashion. Let's see, are there any more questions coming through the chat at the moment? Okay, I think this is probably, we have another question from Chimeng Soon. Chimeng, are you there? Would you like to ask your question directly to Maria? Chimeng, can you hear me? Are you out there?
Yeah, sorry, I just got permission to unmute. Yeah, one advice for young designer.
He wants to know if you have any advice for a young designer or young people pursuing design.
I mean, my advice is always find your own voice. I think it's key to have your own story and get creative with less, and please be sustainable. Start from a very edited and true point, and not big. Small is good. Small and perfectly sized, it's good.
Small and about you.
Yes,
absolutely.
It's small and true to yourself.
Wow, that's great advice. All right. Well, listen, I want to thank everyone for joining us today. Thank you so much, Maria. This has been amazing.
Thank you.
We're going to hug as soon as we switch this off. Just to remind everyone that next Wednesday, my co-host, Glenn Adamson, will be back on Design and Dialogue with a friend from South Africa and an artist in ceramics who's recently, well, I guess has always woven a kind of spirituality into his practice. Please join us next Wednesday for Andili Dialaven. So thank you so much. This has been Design and Dialogue.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Have a great weekend, everybody.
Bye.